Good morning, North America. Welcome to Church Talk TV. Lively talk about life, church, and church life. I'm your co-host, Dr. Bill Tenney-Britton, and I'm joined, as usual, by my co-host, Dr. Kris Tenney-Britton, and we're broadcasting from our studio in Columbia, Missouri, the heartland of America. Say good morning, Kris.
Well, good morning, and welcome to Church Talk TV.
Kris and Bill Tenney-Britton here today to talk about a topic that's really kind of controversial in church. I mean, and it really is a lot of pushback
on it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about your target audience, and your target audience as in who you're trying to reach specifically, and that person, when you flesh it out, if you will, or create it, we call your outreach avatar.
Okay, so we're going to get to talking about avatars. While we're getting there, though, you might be thinking, stop thinking about blue things. So, right, because I'm thinking, wasn't that the name of a movie, Avatar?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. I'd be like, I'm crazy. I'm like, wait, wasn't there a movie?
I didn't know. I didn't know where the blue thing was coming.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
okay,
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay. All right. There was a movie, had little blue things called avatars in it. Don't think about that.
Yeah. Well,
okay, so here we go. So we're going to talk
now
about...
the only thing you think about are little blue avatars. I know that works. Psychology.
Blue Martians.
That's right.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry, y'all. Okay, why does it matter? If you're not targeted, it's going to dilute your message. And we've practiced for years what we call y'all come evangelism, right? Who are you targeting? Well, everybody. You know,
because we want everyone to come. Because most of our churches in the United States are desperate. We just need someone to show up, so we invite everybody in the whole wide world.
But I mean, back when people were coming to church, right? Lots of folks were coming.
1950s, yeah.
And 60s, they were coming in the 60s, less so in the 70s, depending on what church you were seeing, right? I mean, but
always
it's like
individual
in the
churches.
80s, we start to realize that there are some problems going on here. Yeah. Definitely in the 90s, but 60s and 70s, and even beginning in the 80s, we're not really sensing in the 80s even, wow, we are like facing a crisis.
Right.
We didn't know, okay?
Right.
And it wasn't just delusion, we just didn't know. We weren't expecting that yet. Even though we were experiencing it, we hadn't been and we just didn't have a concept of that, okay? So we really were reaching everyone, or many of our churches
we thought
weren't
we were
reaching everyone. Right, but I mean, you think, we had a whole conglomeration, and when you had, larger churches, there were all these different Sunday school classes because y'all came, right? So that doesn't work that way anymore. What we know, it from marketing, y'all know this, you really, really do, that you have to have a direct message. And there are some, I was thinking about this today, I think it's Progressive that has this commercial right now, and there's an emu in it, and this guy.
That Liberty has the emu.
Oh, it's Liberty. I can't stand that. I can't stand that commercial. Liberty, Liberty, Liberty. Or one of them. Bibbidi, bibbidi, bibbidi. Anyways, I can't stand that emu. Not fond of the guy. Sorry out there if you're watching. But I realized, or I had to say to myself again this morning, that commercial was not for you. I'm not their target, right? So that's the kind of piece we're watching for. And there are people that like emus and can keep on going. Don't want to dilute your message.
Well, and here's the reality of all this. Okay, is that that having a target audience, it seems almost unbiblical, unchristian. It's like we're excluding someone.
I was going to say, isn't it exclusive?
Yeah, and let me just be real. First, I'm going to go to the biblical piece second. First, I want to say this. Most congregations are already pretty exclusive. They have a target audience, and that's the people who are already coming. And they've designed their worship, they've designed their events, and they've designed pretty much everything for those who are there. And they hope that people who are unlike them will show up and go, oh, this is what I've been missing. And it doesn't happen, because everyone who loves what we love is probably pretty much already in church. And so when a congregation says we're going to work on an outreach avatar, we're going to reach outside of our congregation to try and reach some segment of our community, we're not being exclusive. In fact, we're becoming more diverse, because for most of our congregations, this is who we are. and we don't have anyone else coming on a regular basis and
that's
getting
a good
involved.
point.
So we become more diverse. But let me just real quick go to the biblical concept here, because it does seem really exclusive. Like, we're not inviting so and so. First thing is that you're not going to stop inviting everybody.
Everyone's welcome.
Okay, everyone's welcome, but biblically, from the very beginning, or almost the very beginning, there have always been target audiences. Who was God's target audience? The Hebrews. There's chosen people. He raised them up, and what was their job? According to, I believe it was Isaiah, they were told that they would be a light to the Gentiles. That the whole point of God raising up Israel was so they could reach the world. But God had a target audience. Jesus had a target audience. Now, don't get me wrong. Jesus did ministry with the Samaritans. He did ministry with the Romans. I mean, this was the occupying army, and he did ministry with them. He healed the centurion's a servant and a son, as I recall, et cetera, et cetera. But he was really clear. He said, I was sent to the lost sheep of Israel. That's my target audience. That's who I'm sent for. It didn't stop him from inviting everybody and working with everyone, but he said, this is who my message is for. I'm targeting my message for them. Paul had a target audience. The early church had a target audience. They were, et cetera, et cetera. The key here is that a target audience is biblical, and in your congregation, most likely, having a different target audience is probably a way of diversifying your current congregation.
Yeah, that's good. It also has a sense of inclusivity, right? I mean, we want to be diverse, and we don't want to be necessarily exclusive, but we do want to be inclusive, and we're only able to offer so many programs, so many types of ministries, and we want people to be included. But if we're all over and out there, then it really is going to become a point of contention, or it could be whoever moans the loudest is the one who gets our attention, or the one to whom we give attention and we move forward. So this is a way of saying, wow, if you've got if you're 65 and older, and or not okay, I don't want to say it that way. We are targeting people who are 65 years or older and have grandchildren
and have significant church experience.
Okay, and so that's who we want to target. So our messages are going to be directed that way. Our classes and small groups, our ministries, all of that will be around there. Now, I'm not 65 yet. Will I be included? Well, yeah, because I'll go with my husband, who is. But no,
yes,
but it's like moving into an over a 65 and older community, right? If you're 63, 64, they're not going to exclude you, but what they're doing is it's
designed for them, right? So this isn't a new concept. Obviously, it goes back to pre-Jesus. It goes back to when God chose the Hebrews, but in more recent years, really, we saw the rise of a targeted audience being named with Willow Creek and Saddleback.
Right.
We had Unchurched Harry and Mary, that was Willow Creek, and Saddleback Sam, that was obviously Saddleback. And all they did was say, hey, listen, we know that we have limited appeal to a segment of the audience,
right,
a segment of our population. And so I'm going to use Willow Creek as my favorite example. So they targeted a 35-year-old family man. It was Unchurched Harry, and he was the target. Now, Unchurched Harry was married. That was part of the whole thing. He was a family guy. He had kids. And so Willow Creek, when they did the design of their building, when they designed their worship services and all the rest, they kept in the back of their mind, how do we reach Unchurched Harry? But because Unchurched Harry was married, they knew they had to have programming for Unchurched Mary. And so, because if his wife wasn't included, Harry wasn't going to keep coming. And so there was ministries for Mary, and they had kids. And so there was ministry for the kids, because that's important to Harry. Now, let's just push this out. If you ever had an opportunity to learn about or go to Willow Creek, we had an opportunity and to worship. And if you looked around, there was a wide diversity of people. There were people of different ethnicities and races and ages and stages. And there were people who were hard and fast believers and those who were complete seekers. How, having this very narrow, and it was a very narrow target audience,
that is narrow.
Did they have such a wide group? Well, see, here's how it works. Harry was married, had kids. He also had neighbors. And he knew that if his neighbors, maybe his neighbors weren't the same ethnicity he was, or the same race he was, but they were friends, they were neighbors, they got to get along. And so Willow Creek knew that if Harry invited his neighbors, they needed to be inclusive there. Well, and the people he worked with, and the people he was related to.
And his parents.
And that's right.
Right? I mean, that was one of the pieces for me. When your mom and dad were looking for a new church home, they wound up they were dyed-in-the-wool disciples for generations.
A mainline denomination,
mainliners. Right. And so we went to see them, and
they invited us to church.
They invited us to church, and they're in a mega church with band, the
loud band.
Yeah, and I remember looking at Mom and saying, wow, I know this is not your style of music or even your style of worship. And she said, Kris, look around you. Do you see all these young people? This is where I want to be. And I believe that if we were worshiping at a place and Mom and Dad were still alive and we were all living near them, if we were worshiping somewhere, that they would come. In fact, your mom was doing that when your brother lived there in California, right?
So here's the whole point, is that being or having a target avatar, a target audience, an outreach avatar is not exclusive. All it does is it opens your congregation up for more diversity beyond who you are. So, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to take us on.
Yeah, go.
And
Yeah,
say,
right, exactly.
So we've talked I think about why it matters, right? So let's get down to talking about developing your outreach avatar. We're talking very specific. You and I have worked on this, like with the Prayer Power Network. As I've worked with Prayer Power Network, you've said, okay, who's your target? So, you start with something like, is it a male, is it a female? For churches, are they churched? Are they unchurched? How much money do they make? What age are they? Our age range
what do
of
they do
40
for a living?
to 50 is not. It's like
nobody's between 40 and 50. They're 43 or 44.
That's a tough one. Yeah. Do they have children? Did I say already? Do they have children? Do they not have children? Where do they work? Right? Do they work? What kind of hobbies do they have?
Right. So let me back up, because she's run way down in.
I'm so excited about this. I love this concept.
Okay. So when you go to create your outreach avatar, the whole point of having your target audience is to answer the question, who can we best reach and hang on to? For instance, if you are an English-speaking congregation, and that is who you are, and that is the only language you speak, you don't want to spend a lot of energy and a lot of money trying to reach the Hispanic people who don't speak English outside your congregation.
Even if they're 80% of your community. Right. That's going to take a commitment to bring in a different pastor or a pastor alongside you.
If you decide to reach that audience.
If you decide that's your need. But I'm trying to bring home what you're saying, that it needs to be somebody you can realistically reach and keep.
What I was going to say is that if you reach and put your energy into advertising to the Hispanic population, and a Hispanic family comes who speaks no English, and they show up, they're not coming back. And my guess is they would be welcome. I hope they better be welcome. Let me just tell you that, because otherwise you're not really a church. Okay, you're a club. But they're you would make them welcome. You'd pull out your Google Translate and you'd try to communicate, and you would communicate because Google Translate works pretty well.
That's awesome.
And whatever. But it's not for them. They would not get a lot out of it. They probably wouldn't be back. On the other hand, if your congregation says, we're going to reach, let's say unchurched people who are a 35-year-old guy, that is our primary target, who has some church history way in the back. He went as a kid. But he really doesn't know much. He doesn't go to church now, hasn't been in church in forever. And that becomes your target audience. And you design your worship service for him let's say you do some of the old hymns that probably he would have known or be familiar with, and you develop a sermon that is designed for him. Now, the problems that he has are the same problems everyone else in your congregation has in some way. He has relationship problems, so do people in your congregation. He has financial problems, so do people in your congregation. Virtually every problem someone outside the church has, they have some of the same problems, or you have some of the same problems they do. Right.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're not preaching to your congregation, but you develop your sermon for this 35-year-old guy who has very little church experience. So you're going to define your terms while you preach. You're not going to talk about eschatology, because no one knows what eschatology is. You're not going to use the word narthex, because no one knows where a narthex is. You're going to translate your language. You're going to explain, Matthew in the Gospels. What's a gospel? Who's a Matthew? You're just going
book in the New Testament of the Bible.
Right, and you're just going to touch on these things so that when this guy, let's call him Mike, shows up, he's going, oh, I got it. Okay, because you explain as you go. And if you've done that, and you've befriended him, you've done good hospitality, we've done a lot of episodes on that, he's likely to show back up. That's the point of having and defining your outreach avatar. So that when you design your worship service, when you design your events, that when Mike, in this case, 35-year-old guy, married with 2 kids, we'll say, when he shows up because of the marketing that you've done for him, and he goes, oh, they're talking about how to have a stronger marriage, and my marriage is kind of rocky right now. And he says to his gal, let's go check this out. And he hears a sermon that addresses his needs and is in the language he understands, and you've been hospitable. He goes, I want to come back. I want to hear part 2 of this sermon. And your outreach avatar and the whole point of having the outreach avatar has won the day, because you've targeted and got them. Yeah.
So I want to add to that, but
absolutely.
It's adding to it and going back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we both done that.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, and that's to say that he has friends. And so a friend of his may be having trouble with his marriage, and another one, his wife may have a friend who's having that, or a coworker. So are you seeing what we're talking about? You're preaching to that person, right? That avatar has friends who are similar, very similar
and
to them.
struggling with some of the same issues.
That's right. Oh, and you're always working on those sermon series, so you're going to hit something or someone, but you want to target. You don't want to be doing this for a young married male and then switch over to a single or a widowed 65-year-old woman, right? Or I guess that's
because when Mike shows up for the first time, and you've designed your whole worship service around empty nests, for instance, and he doesn't get empty nest, and you've preached on topics specific for that age group, age and stage, he's going, yeah, okay, that was interesting, but not for me. That's why you target. Now, when the empty nester shows up and hears about marriage issues and whatnot, they may have marriage issues, but they may not have kids.
Right.
But they might have had kids, and and they're going to have grandkids,
right,
and etc. It's easier to look backwards than it is to look forward. Mike is not worried about empty nesting, not an issue that he has. Coming the other way around, it works a little easier.
Well, yeah, you've got grandchildren or grandnieces or nephews.
Right.
You've got schools in your community. You may be concerned about that. You can you can do all of that. Okay. Well, we do need to keep moving here today, and I want to say something more about creating your avatar, and that is you can look at your community's demographics. Again, be careful about that bait and switch.
Yep.
I really do worry about that, because we have taught this before in the past about, well, look at your demographics, and you need to set up your church and what you offer, your programming, your ministries
based on the need of
your demographics.
Right.
And I within the last month, I've heard that being said and being taught, and I get that. But if your community doesn't look like you, Do not do it unless you're going to be an attraction church and you're looking at bringing people in from
Regional
way
church,
out.
a regional church,
What did I call it?
an attraction church.
Oh, okay. How about an attractive church
Yeah,
within your
but-
region?
but a
Okay,
region,
I
right.
understand. I get that. Okay, so you want to be looking at that, having conversations. You know, if you're trying to reach unchurched people and you want to be talking about same marriage, you want to be asking young people that you know, hey, what about this message title? Hey, how about this sermon series?
Find your avatar and have conversations with them.
Yes.
So you create your avatar so you know who it is, and then get out in the community and meet them. They're out there. You won't find them necessarily one who's exactly there, but you can find a Mike, maybe not his name, who is in his 30s and has a couple kids and is married and doesn't have much church experience. That's broad enough for you to have a good conversation and find out what his, and this is the key. You want to find out what it is that keeps him up at night. What is he losing sleep over? Because he's concerned about that. And if you did a sermon series on some of those things that Mike and the Mikes in your world are losing sleep over, they see that sermon title and they go, oh, I need to hear that because that's what I'm struggling with. But you also want to know, what is it that he loves doing? How does he spend his leisure time? What does he love doing? Because you can create events that match that and attracts him, and also do, again, sermon series that talk about that. Yeah.
Right. Well, I want to say here, I don't know if this is where we want to say this, or you want to say it at all. But I want to give a warning out here to you all, because who you target could change the whole direction of your church in ways you have no idea.
Especially if you're successful at it.
Right. Exactly. So, as again, over the years, we've gone through, I've just spent too many conversations with people wanting to talk about, postmoderns, baby boomers. And we want to talk about all, who they are, what they look like. And yet we're not talking to any of them. So what we're saying
we're
here is
projecting.
right.
We
have to be talking to our avatar. So what's the best way to develop ministries for your avatar? Invite your avatars to be at your table, right? So you
and have conversation.
How are they going to come into? And not just your dining table. I'm talking about how are they going to get into on the ministry table or onto that ministry table. But here's our own personal experience that we had a number of years ago. When we moved to Seattle to plant the congregation there, we wanted to reach people who had been marginalized by the church. So non-Christians who had either maybe gone to church a little bit but had left the church, or had otherwise never been to church because they had just an ill feeling about that. And so that was our overall target. And then it was important for me because, and I guess us, that we wanted to have discipleship ministry. Well, what we found were people came, marginalized people who had friends who had been marginalized, people whose friends wouldn't come.
Our avatar was spot on and it worked.
Right, yeah. In 2 cases, I was out in our parking lot, 2 different cases with people had brought their friends and their friends couldn't bring themselves to walk into the church building, and I was out there having church with them in the car. And that's what we were doing, but with that brought this huge heart for social justice and social ministry, not social justice, but outreach ministry, mission ministry, which was not in either one of our DNAs at all. And so what happens is this church progresses, we find, oh my gosh, we have a whole bunch of folk and they look nothing like what we ever expected, and they were wanting, needing, and creating, because now they were in our ministry teams. They're creating ministries that just really weren't suited for our leader. Better way to say this is our leadership wasn't best suited for them, and so we had to look at expanding our ministry team and what that was going to look like.
Right, absolutely. So again, the key to remember is that when you are successful at your target avatar. Bringing in a target audience, that in time, if you're successful, the core of your church will change, the tenor of your church will change, the ministries of your church will change, and if that's not okay, then and there are some churches that say we're not going to grow, we just want to be who we are, and that if that's who you are, then let that be who you are. But the reality is just know that there's an expiration date coming, and that's just going to how it's going to be. Because every church that is moving forward, that is reaching unchurched for Jesus Christ, who are growing, their church is always in a state of transition. They're becoming something new, something different. And if that's not okay, then, to be fair, then just begin to plan your closing date or your handoff date, because that's your future.
So there is a closing date that can be there, but remember that age doesn't necessarily have to be a factor. So
Right.
this is also about, I mean, there's an evangelism, right? It's avatar. So what you're doing is reaching out to others. You can't just sit on your laurels. This is about, you're going to have to up your game. If you've got older folk in your congregation, that's who you're wanting to reach. That's your avatar.
Right.
Be specific.
Right, because there are older folks in your
But you've
community
gotta
that you could
keep
reach.
Reaching, that's the key here.
That's
I
right.
think when
Right.
you've got an avatar, it's an outreach avatar. We reach out to bring people in, and we can never stop doing that.
That's right. And you know, your 50-year-olds today will be 60-year-olds tomorrow. But if your target is 50-year-olds, or you know, the empty nest stage, you know, they're in their 20s right now, because the people who are in their 20s will eventually be in their 50s or 60s when they're empty nest. And so the people who are, as they grow, the ministries have to change, because this generation isn't like that generation, don't like the same things, don't understand the same things. So know that permanent transition in your congregation is your future. Hey,
You never arrive.
That's right. You
And
never
I think
arrive.
we're very destination oriented, but we never arrive.
Right.
Which is good, because we have to say goodbye.
That's right. Hey, it's been great. I hope you've enjoyed and learned something. We'll see you next week.
Have a great week.
Bye.